This summer I'm teaching a class at Indiana University. It's called War is a Cultural Phenomenon, and we talk about various aspects of warfare, including different ways in which warfare and battles can be perceived and described. For that purpose, we read the famous book by John Keegan, The Face of Battle. It's a phenomenal book about not just about battles, but the way you conceptualize them and you describe them. And one of the essays in the book, if you know the book, is about the Battle of Agincourt. So we talked about the book, we talked about that battle with my students, and I really wanted also to play a game, a game that would allow the students to get a better sense visually, dynamically of that battle. Because in this class I'm also trying to expose them, yes, different ways of seeing looking at the battles and playing games about them is one such way. For the Battle of Agincourt, I use a scenario that is on the website JuniorGeneral. It's a phenomenal website with a lot of stuff, all for free, that you can print and play. They have paper soldiers that you can use to make your own miniatures, and they have a lot of scenarios, a lot of sets of rules that will allow you to replicate specific battles. And the scenarios for the games, basically, that you find at JuniorGeneral are designed, I believe that's my feeling, with the classroom in mind. They're designed as games that you can play in an hour or two, and that are very simple, that you can explain to students, and even students that are not familiar with wargaming or with gaming at all can still grasp them and can still play them and get a sense of the historical event represented. So I went on the website, I found a nice scenario for the Battle of Agincourt, and I decided to play with my students. At that point, of course, it was a matter of finding the miniatures. All of the games, I think almost all the games, JuniorGeneral are miniature games, so you need miniatures. Or do you? When you have a set of rules for miniature games, you can use them in a huge variety of ways. Anything that you use that will represent the troops is good enough. Here, what I needed were units that represented some units representing commanders, and also units representing the main units. Each main unit in this game, has 6 bases, 6 stands. That means you would need 6 toy soldiers on a base, on a stand that you move, and there are 6 at the beginning. Every time that the unit takes a hit, a base, a stand is removed, and now you have one less unit. I could have bought plastic soldiers, would have been quite expensive though to buy enough to cover the entire battle. I could have prepared and assembled miniatures from paper, from the paper templates that you have on JuniorGeneral, completely for free, but still a lot of work. But suppose that you're a teacher that is pressed for time. That night you figure out, oh gosh, yeah, why don't I use that scenario? And the next morning it's time for you to teach it. You do not have possibly time to assemble anything. There is still a way of going around this, of teaching very low-key version with very modest production values, but perfectly, absolutely playable. And that way of playing the game is using flashcards. This is what we did. I simply went to class with a stack of flashcards. I wrote longbow on one, and I gave a stack of flashcards to a student, say, well, just write longbow on all the ones in that. Another for infantry. Then there is one for knights, and of course we have some blue units and some red units depending on the side to represent the 2 sides. It's as simple as that. Then I also brought a bunch of d6s, and simply each card got a die on it. They all started showing a 6, representing the number of stands, of bases. So when a unit took a hit, instead of removing a unit, it would simply flip the die to show the new result. Super simple, but actually very effective, very playable. We set up the game on the floor of the classroom. We were around it. I divided the students into groups, the French and the English. And then within the two sides, I also divided them in groups. For example, the students controlling the French were divided in three groups, representing three lines in the battle. The English were divided in wings, so the right wing, the center, and the left wing. And I gave each group control of those units. It's a way to reduce the alpha player, alpha student problem. That is, you may have a student or two that are very passionate. That's great, they're passionate, but they just step in and they make decisions for everybody. And you have other students that are maybe more insecure. Giving absolute independent control of different parts of the army to different students was absolutely a good idea. It allowed and it helped students to be engaged, all of them. So this is all that you need. It won't look all that beautiful, but there is this interesting thing that actually visually, when you're looking at the map on the floor, at the board, at the play area with these things aligned there and moving around, it looks like a military map. In military maps, units are represented by rectangles. Of course, there are also symbols. But in a very abstract sense, it really worked. And definitely having these lines of flashcards moving around, advancing, retreating, was enough, was more than enough to give us a good sense of how the battle went. Also, you need something for commanders. Commanders have a single base, so maybe for those you can invest in a toy soldier. You can have different paper units. What I did, yes, I went fancy. So for commanders and commanders only, we did use paper miniatures, again, printed from Junior General website. Simply, it's you print it, you cut around it, and then I mounted them on plastic stands from Presses Media or Intermedia. No, I don't remember the name. The guys that do disposable heroes. If you go online, look for disposable heroes, you find their websites where you can buy files to print soldiers, but you can also just get soldiers for free from Junior General. But they also sell plastic stands, which really make it even easier to assemble miniatures, even when you're using the paper ones. It's a great way. It has simplified a lot of things for me. I really like the freedom that I have now to choose paper miniatures. So from the many that are available out there, if I want the game that I'm playing to have a different look, it doesn't take virtually any work, simply to print, cut, stick them in the base, and I have my paper miniature. And back to us. I like the idea of having these commanders. Yes, they brought a little bit of color and flavor to the play area. They also stood out well because they were the only vertical pieces as opposed to the horizontal main units. Also, we needed spikes. So we needed the spikes to represent the spikes so that the archers of the English side placed on the floor to form a defense against the charging French cavalry. And to do that, I simply used some other paper miniatures from Junior General. You go on the page for the Battle of Agincourt, you find the link to print your own spikes. And again, using plastic stands, we were able to create a line of spikes. Super simple, super easy way of playing a miniature game. If you are not too interested in the look of a game, if you're interested in simply playing a game, seeing the action fluid in a fluid fashion with interaction among players, of course, this is the way to go. So in this video, I hope that it also gave you some ideas on how to play miniature games on the cheap and very low-key, very easy. Even if you are improvising, you decide to play a battle, you go on Junior General, 10 minutes later you're playing the game, you're playing that battle. Also because reading the rules will not take you too long. So as for the rules of Agincourt specifically, super simple, super intuitive. The French unit first move, then range units belonging to the French player get to shoot. then the English move and shoot with the ranged units. Then you have the charge phase. That is, if units are able to reach an opponent by moving by the regular movement, they can do that. And both players have a chance at that in that phase of moving and charging. If there is a problem about simultaneous action, then the French go first. So you simply move by your usual speed if that will allow you to get in contact with a unit. And if that happens, then you get in contact with a unit and you start a melee. This is the only way you can get in contact with a unit during the charge phase. Then you resolve combat, which is extremely simple. Each unit fires attacks. Actually, no. Combat is the same for range combat and close combat. Each unit rolls a number of dice equal to the number of bases that you still have, and then you simply look at the number to hit, which is different for each unit. If you roll that number or higher, you inflict a hit on the opponent, and that reduces the base of the opponent. In range combat, only one side, of course, is fine against the other. In close combat, both sides are rolling and potentially inflicting damage. There are some modifiers, but really not many. For example, the commanders attached to units give an extra die to the unit, but then the unit gets hit, you need to roll a die. If you roll a 6, the commander is killed or captured. Modifiers based on cavalry charges. I also added another modifier, which was for flanking. If you manage to attack a unit and get in contact on the flank, then you get an extra die. That's also to simulate part of the Battle of Agincourt, in which there was a flank attack from the English. The French archers managed to push one side of the line of the French. So there was that bonus there. Also, the rules about movement were extremely vague. They simply said move up to your movement allowance, 6 inches for infantry, 12 for cavalry. I added this thing that you can pivot your units by no more than 45 degrees per side, and then move, and that's it. And you keep the orientation, or you move and then you reorient yourself. Just to make movements a little more realistic. I don't even know actually that was all that necessary. Probably students would have, and players in general in this battle would have gone for linear movements, and anyways, not for crazy Byzantine movement. But I like to have that little bit of that facing thing, at least facing and moving it that way. At least the students got to think about that. I didn't want these armies to be too agile. This is the game. Victory conditions: the English lose the game and the French win if the king of the English is killed. The French win and the English lose, killed or captured. If the English king survives, then the French lose and the English win. However, I couldn't find a condition about how you end the game, so our condition was very simple. When the French look at the play area and they say, we have taken enough, we are not going to make it. When the French give up. It's a little vague, it's a little blurred, and of course, if that had gone for too long, then I simply, as the referee of the game, as the umpire, would have stepped in and said, well, no, sorry, but French, look at this. There's no way the English win. How did it go? Marvelously. It was a phenomenal experience. The students loved it. To see students so engaged, the fact that they had read about the battle gave them an enormous appreciation of what was happening, made them feel that the work that they had done by reading about the battle now was coming together in a fun experience, and yet still a learning experience. They were really getting more insights about the battle, being the French and charging with that cavalry under the fire of the English archers. It's just reading about is one thing, playing a game in which that is happening and you're just suffering turn after turn to reach the archers. It's a completely different experience. And then things overall played according to historical lines. The battle is set at the beginning. There isn't all that much that can be done. And again, it's good for pedagogical purposes, but at the same time, but at the same time, the students still tried some variations there. For example, the French tried to attack in a more coordinated fashion than the French had done historically. Some of the archers of the English moved past the original line. They gave up the protection, but they did that to inflict some early hits against the incoming French cavalry and to be able to concentrate on French cavalry. It was fun. It was really fun. We had fun. We enjoyed the game. But what also matters is that really the students got passionate about it. This is the point. It's easy to teach if you're just regurgitating content. It is much harder to do so if you want your students to be passionate about it and excited about the topic. Including historical war games where the students can simulate the things that they read about is a fantastic way to help students appreciate history and to improve the chances that they will fall in love with this phenomenal, beautiful discipline, which is history, and maybe also with this great hobby, which wargaming is. The battle, of course, is a large simplification of the historical event. It really gives you just the big picture. And it even omits some things that are really important. And John Keegan, in his essay that was the starting point for our experience, stresses the importance of some factors that are not in the game. Even that was interesting because the students noticed that. For example, John Keegan makes quite a deal about the obstacle that the French wounded and the French dead formed as they were falling on the ground for the advance of the following waves of French soldiers. The students asked me, where the bodies disappear? When a unit is destroyed, can we do something? Actually, they came up with the idea that could be turned into an area that the attackers would have a penalty if they attack through that area, and there would be a penalty moving. That coming from the students is something really, really rewarding. Also, they notice that you don't have the option as the English player to slaughter the French prisoners, and they're like, too bad. No, not really. My students are not that bloody. That they don't have that thirst for blood. But they noticed that fact, and when we talked about it, how difficult it would have been to simulate that. You would have that to extra rules. Would that have really changed much in the overall battle in that simulation? Great, a great experience per se, and a great starting point for great discussions that followed about the battle, about the art of simulating battles. At the beginning, the students may be a little scared, uncertain. They may never played a game of this type. So the first couple of turns, you simply act as a teacher as you repeat things and you instruct them, move that, now you roll, now you do this. After a while, they forgot about me. The game took on its own momentum, on its own life. All the students knew the rules perfectly well. They internalized it and were thinking through them rather than thinking about the rules and making sure that you move. They were going past the rules and experiencing the game, the movement, the narrative, the story. To me, that was a great experience. If you ever decide to include one of the battles from JuniorGeneral in your classes, I think you're likely to have a similar experience. Was a lot of fun, a great teaching experience for me, and I really believe a great learning experience for the students. So highly recommended. Try JuniorGeneral in general for all the scenarios. About the specific scenario about Agincourt, it works well. It simulates the main events of the battle with the initial volleys from the archers, the charge of the French, the melee. It simulates that. It gives the students a good insight about the overall moving pieces of the battle. Definitely a great experience. If you're a teacher, consider maybe including an activity of this kind in your classes if the things that you're teaching relate to it, of course. As a wargamer, should you play this game? I don't know that you need it. I don't know that it's necessary. But even for you as a recreational wargamer, if you just want to play it, on your own. It is simple. It could be actually an introduction to miniature wargaming. I think this game does not have enough meat to really be interesting for experienced wargamer, but if you're introducing a new player or a very young player, then I think this could be a perfectly usable and very useful tool. Agincourt from Junior General, very good representation of the battle for what it is as an introduction to the battle and to wargaming, and the website just phenomenal. Go and have a look. It's a great website.